Hey everybody, welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Today, I want to do a little review of probably a mostly forgotten TV show from 1961 called 87th Precinct. It is based on the crime novels of Ed McBain. Several episodes are adaptations of books that he wrote. A lot of his material in his 87th Precinct series has been adapted into films, etc. This was a TV series, and this is a good one. I think if you enjoy police procedurals, this is a show you might want to watch. We're going to take a look at some images of the first episode, entitled The Floater, directed by Herschel Daugherty, teleplay by Winston Miller, and this one is based on an Ed McBain novel. It is one of my favorite of the series, actually. So we'll take a quick look at that, and we'll talk about the series a little bit as we go. So let's get started. So we begin on the waterfront. Now, McBain's novels are set in a big city. We don't necessarily know where it is outside of the East Coast, so probably somewhere between Maryland and New York. It's not necessarily a real city, but it's actually a pretty gritty, realistic TV series. It has some aspects you could maybe say of, a Dragnet in terms of showing the police solving the crime, but it's a little more personable than Dragnet as well. So a boy is swimming in the river, and he comes across the body of a woman, and this launches the show and the case that they're primarily working on. And you can see 1961, this is pretty realistic and pretty grim. And maybe that hurt it. Maybe it was a little bit too realistic, a little bit too down to earth, but that's what they're going for. And I think they do a really good job through the series of hitting that. We get the title sequence, 87th Precinct. Now, the first episode title sequence is a little bit different than what we'll see, at least in terms of how the wording pops up. You know, this was obviously like the pilot episode, and then they maybe got a little bit more money to do something fancier. So 87th Precinct, starring Robert Lansing as Detective Steve Carella. You might remember him famously as Gary 7 in an episode of Star Trek that, oh man, if you talk about going into an alternate, dimension where you could grab a TV series that should have been made but wasn't. That's one I would love to see. I'd love to see the Gary 7 TV series. But he did a lot of films, a lot of TV, and he does a great job in this. He's very grounded. He's not excitable. It's not like a William Shatner performance, but it works really, really well. In fact, if you ever saw that Gary 7 episode of Star Trek, you kind of understand, but a little bit more personable, because they do kind of get into his personal life and the personal lives of the other detectives in the precinct. Ron Harper plays Detective Bert King. He is sort of the youngest in the group. Some episodes he has a fiance, some episodes she's a wife. So you get the feeling these are not in a particular chronological order. I admit it was a little bit confusing to me the first time I was watching it, because I'm going, wait a minute, weren't they married an episode ago? Norman Fell, famous for Three's Company, Mr. Roper, plays Detective Meyer. And he does not break the fourth wall in this series, but he does a great job, and you get to see him playing a more serious character, although there's a little bit of comedy here and there with him, but not like, silly comedy. And he is a big part of the second episode, which is also a really good episode, in my opinion. Gregory Walcott stars in here as Detective Roger Haviland. Seems like he's sort of a Southerner, maybe a Texan. He's a little bit more brusque. He's a little bit more severe than the other guys in the precinct. And in this episode, and in a few other ones, we get Gena Rowlands playing Teddy, who is Steve Carella's wife. She's real important in this episode and the next, and her episodes, I have to admit, are some of my favorite in the series. She does a really, really great job with it. Our guest star Robert Culp, who does a fantastic job in this episode as well as sort of our special guest villain. So there we have the floater. And obviously, I'm sure a lot of you understand what that refers to. It's a body found in water. And so again, kind of a gritty, kind of a dark series to some degree. We won't get into it, but there's a few episodes where you're going, wow, 1961, huh? Yeah, you'd be surprised sometimes what they did back then. So we first get this glimpse of some working girls who are being rousted and put in the wagon. And then we see the precinct, I guess you could kind of call it the squad room. There are elements of this show that remind me of Barney Miller, or maybe I should say vice versa. It's not a comedy, but the way these guys work together, the setup here reminds me, and it makes me wonder, when Reinhold Weege was writing Barney Miller, was this show somehow in his mind? Was he playing off of that, or is it just a complete, coincidence? So Meyer, as you saw in that last image, was talking to a woman who, taking a statement from her about a crime. Roger is bringing in this punk who was sporting a knife. I think it was a switchblade, which were illegal back in the day. And Bert is on the phone with his fiance / wife, I think wife in this one. So you kind of get to see these guys, a little bit of their personalities, how they work. And Steve then gets the call to go to the river. A floater has been found. He hates floaters. And so, this, like I said, it is a police procedural, and you get the following of leads, you get clues. But like I said, it's a little more dramatic than, say, a Dragnet episode. And you will sometimes get like odd chances that help them to solve the crimes. So a little bit more of a narrative, a little more of a drama, and definitely more warmth and emotion that you get in Dragnet. And that's not a complaint with Dragnet. I love Dragnet. So they recover the body. He goes and visits the coroner, who's had a chance to look, reveals that she was dead when she hit the water from acute arsenic poisoning. And the body was in the water for about 3 weeks. And then we get some more statistics, and he's, going through like her height and things of that nature. And one of the details gets Steve's attention. She had a small tattoo between her thumb and forefinger shaped like a heart with the word Mac, M-A-C, inside of it. So it's going to be like in this general vicinity. So kind of an odd place for a tattoo. So maybe that's going to be a lead. And I really like Lansing's performance. Like I said in the series, low-key, serious but not overly serious, never overly dramatic, good authentic feel to the character. So one last question to the coroner. Was she pretty? And the coroner replies, after 3 weeks in the water, nobody's pretty. Which seems like maybe an odd question, but no, I mean, that could go to motive. But again, the arsenic poisoning, that's the weird part, right? This is definitely not a drowning. It was definitely a murder. So what was behind that? It's not, it's not like a way you would, not a crime of passion kind of thing. Okay. So Meyer and Steve go to the Bureau of Missing Persons, who are really no help to them at first, but they're able to get in and check their files, and they do find a possibility of who this might be. Mary Louise Florschek, a girl who left Scranton, Pennsylvania looking for excitement and found it in the worst way. So like I said, procedural, we're hunting down clues, etc. You do see a little bit of the drudgery of police work. They bring in her father. He takes it hard, primarily initially like, nope, that's not her. Absolutely not. And look, I mean, I can't even imagine what you would go through. They're trying to be sensitive with him, but they're positive that's who they have. The dental records match, and they're trying to get some information out of him that can help him figure out who did all of this. But it's, he's really going through hell. It's a really good scene. Meanwhile, they have Bert working on the tattoo angle. He's hitting tattoo parlors, running them down. Nothing yet. So now, and this is where I really like this in the series, now we're going to meet Steve's wife, Teddy, who is a deaf mute. Rowlands does a really beautiful job of playing the character, charming as hell, but obviously does not speak, and they really make it work. And you could also understand why, she's only going to be in 4 episodes, at least in this first season. If they'd had more seasons, who knows? But it helps humanize Steve. The character really serves a purpose in these episodes, as you'll see in this one in particular. And, but you kind of understand, could be hard to work her into everything. So they don't overuse the character, somewhat like Barney Miller's wife, who only shows up a few times in that particular series. So, and I think having her in it, you get a better understanding of the character of Steve Carella. So I think she was a really important addition to it. Here you see her talking with him. He's kind of brooding over the case and what he's going through. She's trying to kind of, lift his spirits. And so they're talking. She kind of ends up sitting in his lap. But what we do is we pan down as they're talking. Well, he's talking. She's kind of talking to this newspaper that's on the floor next to his chair. And we see personal ad, widower, mature, attractive, lonesome, 35 years old, seeks alliance with understanding woman of good character. Write P.O. Box 137. So some of the episodes are a little bit like a whodunit, but mostly we're not talking mysteries. It's more of a crime show. So kind of like with Columbo, you kind of know who's doing everything, and then you're going to watch them track them down. And this brings us now to our special guest villain, played by Robert Culp, and his next victim. Basically, this is a guy, a psycho, who preys on lonely women with self-image problems. He's real sweet to them, but he's going to ultimately take their money, and he's going to get rid of them. Have there been others besides the woman that they found? Possibly, we don't know. So after that scene of those two and him seemingly really sweet to her, we see Steve and Teddy. He picks her up to take her out to lunch. So it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition of the two couples. But on the way to lunch, he needs to stop off at a tattoo parlor to check and see if they've, if the guy's done any tattoos like the one they found on the woman. So she decides to go in with him. She's kind of waiting. He's talking to the guy. Parlor happens to be owned by Charlie Chan's number 2 son from the old Charlie Chan movies, played by Victor Sin Young, does a great job in this. So he, kind of goes over with the guy, here's what we're looking for. No, I haven't done anything like that, but would you guys like a tattoo? And Teddy's kind of interested, and Steve's like, no, we're not doing any tattoos. We don't have time for that. Okay. So they run off to lunch. Bert, on the other hand, has more luck. Finds the place where the tattoo was done. Tattoo artist says the woman was crying the whole time, and the guy was grinning like he was enjoying it. So there's kind of zeroing in on the type of person that they're, going after. We then get a brief scene of they're in the little restaurant there. It's like a little Italian place. And Steve, has to go to the restroom to wash up, leaving Teddy at the table. And this guy starts hitting on her. Steve breaks it up, and this turns into a fight. Couple interesting things here. And again, we're kind of showing who the character of Steve Carella is, because he is going to be kind of the lead character for the series, even though they do episodes that are focused on the other cops. He doesn't use his badge to get out of the fight, and he does kick the guy's ass. So, and, kind of ends with the guy on the ground and him saying, go get a cop to pick this guy up. So you get a little bit, and you also get a little bit of action in the show, which of course helps keep people interested in it. So back to business. Roger brings in an exotic dancer while Bert and Meyer look on wistfully. Again, it's a little more of an adult show, not like Dirty, but, a little more of an adult show. The things they deal with, again, reminded me of Barney Miller. They were always bringing in, crazy people, and they were bringing in prostitutes and all that other stuff. And so you kind of gotta, a view of the seedier side of New York from Barney Miller. So while these guys are kind of, looking at the exotic dancer, Steve interrupts their reverie with a description of the killer that they're hunting, because now they've gotten a description. Bert got that description from the other tattoo parlor. He's a big guy. He enjoys watching women be hurt. So they know this is not going to be a pleasant case, but they also know they've absolutely got to get this guy. Back at Steve's apartment, Teddy ponders the potential of getting a tattoo, and she decides to go to the place that they visited earlier and get it, because Steve's working late, so why not? Might be fun. So while she's there, who should arrive to get a tattoo but the killer and his latest victim? There's going to be a 15-minute wait for them because Teddy got there first. So he takes his victim to a bar down the street where he drugs her drink. So the customer returns while Teddy is admiring her new tattoo. She just got the thing. And when Charlie, the tattoo artist, hears what the guy has in mind, heart-shaped tattoo. In this case, it's going to be PAC. It's their initials. So that's what the MAC was. He realizes this is the guy the detective was looking for. So he ducks back where Teddy is to warn her, because obviously he knows that she's connected to this police officer. There's detective, I guess I should say. Now, the guy is annoyed at having a further wait. And so Teddy gives Charlie her husband's phone number. And before he can leave a message for Steve, the killer grabs the phone and ends the call. He doesn't want to wait. Okay, now why is he so... Well, he drugged his victim. She's not going to be conscious much longer. He kind of timed this thing out. So she's starting to feel the effects of the poison. It's starting to double over. So he gets her out of there. Teddy, realizing this is like a major lead, follows in a cab to the waterfront. Teddy tells the cab driver to call Steve, while she follows the killer and his victim on foot. Here's where it gets really good. And you can go, well, this seems unrealistic. Okay. It's a police kind of, drama. It's not meant to be, again, like Dragnet, where it's a much more realistic thing. So good sequence here. Steve finally gets the message. While Teddy is being threatened by the killer on the waterfront. And the fact that she's mute means she cannot scream. She cannot warn. She cannot, Culp is really good here. He's playing a loony, but he does it really beautifully. You've seen him, you've probably seen him play killer in Columbo and a few other things. He could be very, very intense. Oh, he was in a good episode of Tate. That's a show that I reviewed a while ago, playing that kind of methodical, emotionless character. Anyways, does a great job here. So Teddy breaks away for a moment. And this is about the time Steve and the other detectives arrive at the waterfront. They head out to find her. And if I haven't said it already enough, man, Rowlands is so good in this episode. Just great. So the killer finds her. And then thankfully wastes time telling her that, you might be the girl that I really love. I know. It sounds silly. But your skin is so white, so smooth. Oh, I mean, this dude is like mega, mega creepy. And again, Culp does a great job with it. So he's this nut job. He's creepy. It really reflects, again, the tenor of the show and what you're getting. I think this show was a little bit, frankly, ahead of its time. There were some real creepos who showed up on Dragnet. Lee Marvin plays one in one episode. Really good. So you did get it back then, but I get the feeling if this show had been on like a decade later in the 70s, it probably would have done a lot better and would have stayed on the air a bit longer. It's a real intense sequence, real disturbing. Again, the performances of Culp and Rowlands really, 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 really work here. You can tell how terrified she is. And so, but again, the guys were kind of wasting time. Steve is getting closer. And again, she can't scream, right? To warn, like to signal where she might be. So they do really take their time on this show. They do, and they have the time. They don't rush it. And when they got a good scene going, they know how to really milk it out. So really good direction from Darty. Good photography too on this one. Well, finally, Teddy manages to knock this sort of crate over so that Steve knows where she is. The killer runs, cornered by the cops, and Steve manages to beat the guy into submission, and they end up in the water where, he has to haul the guy out of there. So good wins, evil loses. I'm cool with that. And we end with this really nice domestic scene where Steve finally notices the little tattoo that she got on her shoulder while she's sleeping, and he kisses it. I think it's a great show. The cases are good. They're interesting. The cops have personality, and you get to see a little bit of their personal lives. It's a solid police show. Sadly, only got the one season. It was on NBC Monday at 9 p.m. opposite Surfside 6 on ABC, which was a little bit more action adventure on the lighter side, more girls, more swimsuits, which probably helped because you certainly don't get that with 87th Precinct. It's sort of like East Coast, it's just, it's that kind of dingy, gritty side of the big city kind of show. On CBS, it was up against the Danny Thomas Show and its spinoff, the Andy Griffith Show, both in the top 10 of ratings that season. So really tough competition. So sadly, 87th Precinct didn't make it, but that should not dissuade you from watching the show. But here's the rub. Not an easy show to find. I had watched it on YouTube. It's already kind of disappeared from YouTube, except in a version that is almost unwatchable. You can get it on DVD, not cheap. But I know that's a tough one if you've never actually seen a show before to run out and buy the full series on a DVD. If you can find this somewhere, and it'd be so great if it was on a real streaming channel. And again, the one season ones, who owns it? Who knows? Tough. But if you can find it and you like police procedurals, you like that kind of stuff. If you like Ed McBain novels, and I've never read any, I can't compare it, but I think you would probably enjoy this show. Good acting, good writing, good direction, interesting stories, good characters. What say you out there in YouTube land? Have you seen this before? What do you think of it? I'd love to hear in the comments. If you enjoyed this little review of 87th Precinct, please give it a like. Maybe think of subscribing to the channel or sharing with a friend. That would really help me out, and I would very much appreciate it. But until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. Watch 87th Precinct. And I will see you again, hopefully soon, in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.